Hey guys, it's Richie the WizKid here from the Best Darn Diddly Review Show, and I'm here to talk to you about PopThreads.com, your number one source for finding awesome nerdy t-shirts. Are you sick from not knowing what to wear when you go out with all your friends on the weekends? Well, don't have a cow, man. Go to PopThreads.com, and if you use the code SImpsons at checkout, you can save 15% on all your t-shirt needs.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the Best Darn Diddly Review Show. This is a weekly podcast for anyone who loves The Simpsons or ever has loved The Simpsons, hosted by two dudes that grew up on The Simpsons. My name is Miles, better known as MrMostDaysOff, and today we've got yet another classic Season 4 episode for you. But first off, joining me as always, I choose you, Richie the WizKid. How are you today, Rich?
I'm not too sure. At first it was starting to sound very Simpsons-like, but with the choo-choo-choos there, it sounded a little less like Ralph, a little more like I'm your Pikachu or something, and I don't know how I feel about that.
Pikachu, I choose you. I'm not even a Pokemon guy, dude. You know that.
I know, but the way you're like, I choose you, Richie, and then you expect me to pop out a little ball and shock some bitches? Because actually, I might be down for that. Maybe I am your Pikachu. I don't know.
Hey, I just got a lot more interested in Pokemon than I ever have been.
I mean, they're basically like little slaves that you own, right? But we're not here to talk about American history. No.
Oh, fuck.
I'm going to go ahead without any further ado whatsoever, except for these few extra words that followed that statement. I will throw it back to you, the man, the myth, the Martha Washington. It is Miles.
Well, I truly have no idea how to follow that one. So why don't we just get right into the episode? We are talking about I Love Lisa, which debuted on February 11th, 1993.
Just in time for Valentine's Day.
Perfect timing, of course. The chalkboard gag on this one is I will not call the principal Spudhead. And the couch gag is Richie's favorite, the extended, we have a short episode, so we need to fill some time, line dancing and circus couch gag.
Whoever said that was my favorite lied out their teeth. Oh, it was Miles.
Yeah, it may not be the best. I have really fond memories of that one, and I think it's funny now that I know it's just a trick that they use to fill time, because it totally worked on me as a child.
Well, the clip show one that goes over the top is just even better.
Yeah, I keep remembering every time I see this now, it's the second time they've used it, and I really do think that they go even further with it in the clip show, but I can't remember exactly what happens. But we're going to get there pretty soon. So this one opens up in a fun but confusing way. It's actually creative because it's a heart swipe open like they do, where the black opens up in a circle to reveal the shot, but they do it in the shape of the heart. And it's on the radio station KBBL, where they are playing the Monster Mash.
They did the mash. It was a monster mash. The Monster Mash. It was a graveyard smash. They did the mash. It caught on in a flash. They did the mash. It was the Monster Mash.
I love the banter between these DJs, because the one playing the Monster Mash is defending that it's a totally appropriate song for Valentine's Day, and his partner is like, you played the wrong record, didn't you? Why do you do this to me, man?
I like the callback they have at the end of the episode to that, too.
Yeah, that's it's great at the end when we get to the President's Day ending, but we're a little ways away from that. Right now, Bart is altering some of those popular candy hearts you always see with little phrases on them. He's changing them from nice things to sayings like kiss off, eat my shorts, prize pig, and you stink.
The shots, too, it's like in a movie where you see somebody with a eyeglass piece on doing a fake ID where they're very meticulous about it. He looks very much like that while he's repainting all the candy hearts.
Yeah, it's made to be very extreme that he's got to get this precision down perfect, of course, to get the appropriate counterfeit done correctly.
Well, what is he using on there? Because kids are going to eat those, so hopefully it's not
some sort of ink, lead-based ink, or lead-based pencil or something like that. They also shoot over to the Springfield retirement castle, where we see Abe and Jasper talking about how Valentine's Day is just a holiday invented by Hallmark to sell more cards. But then Jasper gets a Valentine from his daughter, and Abe, in like a very sad voice, is like, "Can I have the envelope?"
I mean, I know that you kind of feel that way about Valentine's Day in general, don't you?
I do. I do feel that way about Valentine's Day. It's absolutely a bullshit holiday. And if it's your thing, cool. But at the end of the day, I say you don't need an excuse to celebrate. And especially if you're in love, you don't need an excuse to celebrate that shit. Just go do things together on whatever day. But don't put money in some corporation's hand to sell you some cheap words printed between even cheaper paper.
What? And wasn't St. Valentine something that had nothing to do with love, too? I'm not Catholic, so I don't know.
I honestly don't know or care. It's probably completely historically inaccurate. And again, Hallmark is just manipulating. And it's not just Hallmark, of course. It's all the greeting card companies. I mean, honestly, what we get in this episode is really not that far, where Apu essentially holds Homer hostage for $100 for an old dusty Valentine's chocolate box because he knows he's going to pay it. And that's what's actually pretty fucked up is a lot of times Emily and I will actually wait till the day after Valentine's Day and go buy each other shit because you can get that same stuff for sometimes as much as 90% off the day after Valentine's Day. It's the same fucking chocolate just shaped in a heart, so now it's not nearly as valuable as it was just 24 hours prior.
Oh, that was my dad's birthday, the 15th, so I thought you guys were just celebrating that.
Of course, yeah, that was the other thing.
Roses are red, violets are blue. Here's some expired chocolate because I love you.
Exactly. Before we get back to The Simpsons, there's one quick little scene at Moe's Tavern where Moe gets his Valentine from Barney, and he looks over, and Barney's like, yoo-hoo. And Moe is just like, oh god, no.
Well, at the Springfield Retirement Castle, they hang something on that little pushpin board, the little, like, Cupid, but they staple it in there. Are you supposed to staple into a pushpin board?
I mean, you can. They pull out just the same as a pin does.
I wasn't sure. I don't know. I thought it, like, ruined it or something.
I mean, I'm not a pinboard expert, but I can't imagine that one sharp piece of metal is going to damage it any more than another.
But that staple has two sharp pieces on it.
Yeah, but it's actually, if anything, thinner than the pin. I don't know.
I didn't know if it was, like, semi-permanent or what when you do that, or it's going to rip a little hole in it. I'm not a push pin expert, like you said.
Back at the Simpsons home, something that I think is amazing and awesome any morning gift, ladies, just throwing that out there, or men cooking for your ladies, either one of you, whoever's cooking, whoever's manning the stove, make enough bacon and eggs to write out I love you, and I think that's going to pretty much melt just about anybody's heart, don't you think?
I'm trying to count how many pieces of bacon that would be. L would have 2, O was an egg, V would have 2, E would have 1,
4.
2, 3, 4.
Or I guess since the E legs are short, you could tear a piece of bacon into like thirds to make it.
Yeah, because I was going to say at most that would be 15 pieces of bacon, which Homer would enjoy. But I know there wasn't 15 pieces on that thing.
That's basically a pound of bacon, I think. I think a pound of bacon is like 16 slices usually. I mean, I guess it depends on if it's thick cut or not, but I'm just thinking of what like comes in like a standard package of bacon.
Either way, it made me want a wife that would do that for me, and then I could eat the breakfast super fast and feel good.
My wife doesn't listen to this podcast. It's a shame, because I'd like to tell her that that's what I want for breakfast.
Well, good. If she's not listening, I can finally tell her how I truly feel about her.
Mimosa, Richie?
Love you, Emily. Mimosa?
When Homer gets this special meal and is said it's because of this special day, Homer immediately goes into a panic. He's like, oh god, what am I forgetting? What day is it? Uh-oh. And he realizes he's going to have to take a swing, and he just throws out, Happy Valentine's Day? And lo and behold, he's correct. What a guess. And
Woo-hoo!
It totally works on my... Yeah, he does a little woohoo right at the table.
I thought it was in his brain. In his brain, he's having one of those inner monologues.
Oh, I thought it was like an audible woohoo. That's how I took it. Regardless, it worked on Marge. Marge was thrilled that he remembered, but somebody at the table was suspicious that Homer might not really know what's going on, so Bart starts calling out his dad right then and there. He's like, hey, Homer, why don't you go give Mom her present right now? Ugh, what a lovely idea, boy. I left it upstairs in the second floor of our home. You hear the classic sounds of him running up the stairs and fumbling around. And then he actually attempts to climb down the storm drain on the side of the house, but he's so big, it bends and falls into the backyard where they see him. Everyone clearly sees him fall into the yard, and he just scampers away anyway.
What I liked about this is typically, like, in the past, they've been doing this a lot lately, where you hear, like, I'll be right back. Then you hear, like, with people running away, getting their car and going. They've been using that a lot lately, so I liked it at the end of this joke, and I think that's why they probably did it. You actually see him scampering away this time a little bit, and they added a little bit of difference to it, so they weren't just repeating the same thing over and over.
Yes, it's always nice whenever they do little things like that to change up the natural rhythm so it doesn't get repetitive, because in a lot of ways they do go back to the same well over and over again, with Homer especially, with the way that he reacts in these situations. So just the fact that they are smart enough to make those subtle differences goes a long way when you're going 30 seasons.
Well, it also proves that there's just too many damn holidays where you're supposed to give thoughtful gifts, if they keep going back in the well for this joke.
Truth. Again, that Hallmark holiday is always ruining things.
And I think Homer, in the back end of his mind, knew it was Valentine's Day, which is why he guessed Valentine's Day. Because think about it, how much TV does he watch? During Valentine's Day, what do you see more than anything else? And that's Valentine's Day commercials. So I think, like, he'd probably been shown multiple times a day that Valentine's Day is coming up. Buy your woman roses, get her some chocolate, take her out for a nice dinner, throw the kids in the garbage, like whatever it is that people do when they're married with kids on Valentine's Day. So I think that it would have been in his brain somewhere.
You're totally right. I think that there would have been a subliminal training that would have got him ready for this big moment.
Which is maybe why he instantly went to Valentine's Day.
True.
Or not instantly, eventually went to Valentine's Day.
I love during this little interaction between Bart and Homer debating on if Homer actually remembered Valentine's Day, basically. Homer's trying to downplay the situation, and he's like, yeah, nobody really makes that big of a deal out of Valentine's Day. And just then we see in the Flanders backyard, Ned is actually serenading Maude with a song that he wrote himself. It's to the tune of the Rod Stewart song, If You Think I'm Sexy, or I'm sorry, Do You Think I'm Sexy? And he sings, if you think I'm cuddly and you want my company, come on, wifey, let me know.
Have you seen that, Maude? I mean, you gotta keep her interested, right?
And just once again, Flanders is one-upping Homer just by being himself, not even really trying, just doing it to the diddliest.
Being his doodliest.
So Homer runs off in a panic. It's the scene we talked about earlier where he actually goes to the Quickie Mart, and Apu knows he needs that heart. It's literally covered in like an inch of dust, and he still charges him $100. Homer threatens him, saying that he's never going to shop there again, and Apu has a little inner monologue moment of panic where he's like, uh-oh, if he discovers the discount mart next door, I'm through here.
I really like that spot, actually. It's doing the Homer treatment to other characters.
Yeah, it's a good touch. And then to save it, he's just like, I'll give you a nickel off of expired baby food. Sold! Which, that's awful that that's what they're giving Maggie. Oh my god.
Maybe that's what gives her the magical abilities. Maybe it's the baby
food.
Food.
That's a fun theory. It's whatever happens to the chemicals in those canisters once they've gone past their expiration.
It's like the ooze from the Ninja Turtles. What's that company called? I always want to say TGIF. But
no, it's TGRI.
TGRI, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a Simpsons glass in that movie. You think we would know that.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's where he samples the mixture that they make to demutinize.
Toka and Rasar. Go, my children.
Fun!
Sorry. I watched that movie a lot as a kid. Come on.
It's a good movie. I still watch it to this day. So we move on to Miss Hoover's second grade class, where all of the students want to exchange their Valentine's Day cards, but Miss Hoover insists that first they're all going to make paper mailboxes to store them in. Lisa points out that sounds like nothing but pointless busy work.
Bullseye. Get cracking.
Ralph has a problem. First, he raises his hand and lets Miss Hoover know that his parents said he's not allowed to use the scissors, to which all of the students start cracking up, laughing at him. And Miss Hoover just says, "The children are right to laugh at you, Ralph. These things couldn't cut butter."
Miss Hoover, I don't have my red crayon.
Where's your red crayon, Ralph?
I ate it.
All the kids start to laugh again, but this time they're interrupted by Principal Skinner, who has an urgent announcement that one of the students in the school, possibly Bart Simpson, has been passing out counterfeit candy hearts with mean statements on them instead of the traditional nice ones.
So I'm guessing Martin probably turned in these counterfeit candy hearts, because who would give those back once you got
What
them?
a narc.
I know, right? I'm just assuming it's Martin. It could be anybody. Maybe Milhouse. He's a mole.
Well, Principal Skinner wants to make it very clear that Valentine's Day is no joke. And they immediately cut to a flashback from Da Nang in Vietnam, 1969, where a young Seymour Skinner is shaving with his knife sitting up on the side of a boat, and a younger member of his squadron is making a homemade Valentine to send to his girl back home. And just as he's filling it out, he's instantly shot up. And it fades back to modern day with Principal Skinner screaming over and over again, "Johnny! No! Johnny!"
Cool. I broke his brain.
Such a dark fucking joke. And a mildly controversial one, because the Simpsons writers actually received some complaints from some Vietnam veterans that they really didn't appreciate this joke and that it actually hit really close to home. There's a really great joke on the commentary where one of the writers was like, "Yeah, we just respond by telling them, what are you talking about? There was no Vietnam flashback sequence on this episode."
Well, I mean, if you think about it, though, like, Skinner is a Vietnam War vet, and this is the kind of things that they do where they have these flashbacks. And then kids, particularly kids of our generation that always had to hear stories about Vietnam. I mean, that Bart responds in one of the more fucked up ways, but, like, kids have no context of that.
No, not at all. It's completely above your head if it wasn't something. I mean, it's like today's kids probably have no real concept of what 9/11 really was like. I mean, that they can
or
read
being in
about
Afghanistan or
or any
Iraq
of it. Yeah, and
Iran,
I mean, we're the same for Vietnam and of course all the prior things that happened. I mean, there's just only so much you can really know if you weren't a part of it. But for what it's worth, Matt Groening's own brother was a veteran of the Vietnam War, and he thought that joke was hilarious.
There you go. It all depends who you talk to.
Back in Miss Hoover's class, the kids are finally handing out their Valentines, and Ralph is sitting all by himself, not getting a single card. Now, granted, it could at least partially be caused by the fact that he did end up gluing his own head to his own shoulder. But either way, he's not getting any Valentines.
This is why in today's world you have to give a card to every kid.
Yeah, that's right. It's like a rule now that if you come to class for Valentine's, I think you literally have to make one for everyone, which is lame as fuck. I mean, how else are you supposed to know if you're popular or not?
I felt like when I was a kid, we had to give them to everybody.
I can't really remember, but I mean, honestly, there was really nobody in the class that I would not have wanted to get. I mean, I didn't really hate anybody in second grade.
You just wanted the cute girl to give you a little bit longer of a message.
Absolutely.
You wanted her to choose you.
And we get the very classic moment that Richie just alluded to, where Lisa takes one of her own Valentines that she received and sees that Ralph feels bad and is sad that he's not getting any cards himself. So she crosses out her name and writes in Ralph's and gives it to him. And he immediately is drawn to it because, one, what a clever card. I choose you. And there's a picture of a train on it. That's adorable.
Hold up. How do you know that was a card to Lisa? Because that was one of the things issues I had with this episode, is that from the way I watched it, maybe they said it in the commentary, but the way I watched it, you just see Lisa scratch out a name and write a name in. And I was going to ask, whose name did she scratch out? Was she giving that card to somebody else? How did you know that was a card given to her?
I just assumed, so honestly, it could have been either way. All we know is she took one of the cards that she had either received or was planning to send out and changed it to give to Ralph so that he would not end up with 0 Valentines.
I think Lisa was going to give that card to Rex.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. That's a super important character that we'll know to love over the next 20-something seasons. I do want to say that just like the sandwich story that we got a few episodes ago with Selma's Choice,
Hoagie.
that this whole story was inspired by something that really did happen to Al Jean. In fact, when he was in 3rd grade, he got a Valentine that was just like this one. It had a picture of a train on it, and it said, "I choose you." And in parentheses, the girl that gave it to him wrote, "I really do." And he never acted upon that because he was an awkward child and just really wasn't even sure even then if she was really into him or not. But that's how this whole story came to be, is that was a real-life Valentine that Al Jean received as a kid. And a lot of the Simpsons staff agreed that they often felt like Ralph. And I'll admit, I also felt this.
Yeah.
I was not a Ralph at all, but there were so many times where I liked a girl, and I feel like, unfortunately, I probably was making her feel a lot like Lisa does in this episode, where they didn't want to be mean to me because I was nice, but I was also a fat loser who they had no interest in, whatever the 3rd grade equivalent of dating is. You know how it was back when we were kids.
Hell, man, that's like every young boy, or, well, maybe young girls. I can't say I understand or know in that regards, but every young boy's biggest fear, that's what this episode is a metaphor of, is going through that. And, like, again, you said it perfectly. We all feel like we've been Ralph, except being adults watching it, you know what's coming. You felt that way and been worried that that's exactly what's going to happen to you numerous times. I feel that way today a lot, where you're like, that's worst case scenario, and that's the part that you always have trouble getting over in your mind, is if that's the worst case scenario, it's honestly not that bad. But at that moment, you're like, oh my god, this is everything. When really,
that means I might as well die. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Very dramatic, but no, I totally know what you mean. And this is another one where I feel a lot differently watching it as an adult, to be honest. I remember this episode very fondly. I watched it a lot as a kid, and I always remember sympathizing with Ralph and really, really understanding what he was going through, because like you just pointed out, I think a lot of us have been there. But I'll say this, as an adult watching this, I don't think that I've ever, before this viewing, really truly understood how awkward that must be for Lisa as well. Just in the sense that you can see throughout this episode that she really doesn't want to hurt Ralph's feelings, and Ralph just isn't taking the hints that she's trying to give. She tries to be pretty clear on the playground later when she attempts to break it off, and he still keeps pursuing her. So again, as an adult, I feel like this episode is even more dynamic than I realized as a kid. Just, I think, having a little bit more empathy than I might have as a teenage boy compared to, a married man now.
But again, even as that, like, you remember times where people were dropping hints at you, and you're still like, oh, they just want to be friends, but I'll keep talking, and eventually I'll get my chance, or I'll keep showing her that I mean more to her, or something like that. Like, you get it from both sides, like you said in this. Like, you don't blame Ralph for trying longer. He's not the first, and he won't be the last guy that tries this with Lisa.
Yeah, and I think a lot of these situations probably do eventually end up in a similar manner, where there has to be some sort of dramatic scene. It's just very unfortunate that, as we'll get to, theirs happens to take place on national television, which is awful. But we're getting way ahead of ourselves. One last little thing on that Al Jean story. He did eventually meet a lady that he ended up marrying. He's a married man to this day. And his wife says that her favorite character on The Simpsons is Ralph Wiggum. And on the inside of Al Jean's wedding band, she had inscribed, "I choose you."
Oh, how sweet.
That's honestly about as adorable as it gets right there, folks. I don't know how else to what else to say on that other than just aw.
The only way it could be more adorable is if she had a second inscription, which is Ralph's follow-up line. The doctor said I wouldn't have so many nosebleeds if I kept my finger out of there.
Exactly.
But that's a lot to fit on the wedding band.
So Lisa's dealing with Ralph. Meanwhile, Bart is just excited because Valentine's Day means a special lunch menu. And we see what that's going to be. There's a delivery of beef hearts that the lunch lady is like, yeah, just drop them on the floor. The delivery guy's like, are you sure? That doesn't look very clean.
Just do your job, heart boy.
Exactly. All it really accomplishes is Bart gets a pretty epic prank out of these hearts, because he's eating his lunch and he starts to pretend like he's having some sort of chest pain. He starts complaining that his new heart is rejecting him. And just then, he flops the heart on the table and acts as if he's passing out. I also just love how smug he is about this. Like, he's so satisfied with his prank. He's like,
Well, really, you don't prank for other people. You prank for your own satisfaction.
True story. So we talked a little bit about it already, but Ralph was actually waiting for Lisa and asked if he could walk her home after school on Valentine's Day. And Lisa was kind of a little hesitant, but ultimately agreed. Ralph didn't really have a whole lot to say. The best thing he could muster was like, so, do you, like stuff? Lisa was very excited when they got to her house. She quickly ran off, leaving him there. Again, he was just hung up on that choo-choo-choos joke. He couldn't get enough about that. Admittedly, Lisa said it's a good gag, but you could tell that she was already starting to wear on it quite a bit. But Ralph was 100% gung-ho, and she could not be more excited to get away from him when they got to her house.
She was like, that's supposed to be given to Rex. Damn it.
She even ran past the TV, which had Itchy and Scratchy on it. Homer and Bart stayed and watched it, but she ran straight through. This episode, of course, was Valentine's Day themed. It was called My Bloody Valentine. And it was actually kind of fun. Itchy and Scratchy exchanged Valentine's hearts, only Itchy forgot to get one or just chose to rip the one out of Scratchy's chest instead. And I love the big reveal on this, because once Scratchy's back home, he puts the heart on his mantle and he reads the newspaper where he learns, and you might be shocked to learn this, Richie, but turns out you need your heart to live.
What? Since when? How long? What?
Scratchy immediately starts panicking and trying to get his heart back in place, but he falls over dead before he can replace it, leaving everybody in stitches.
I hate the way you ended that.
You're welcome. After Itchy and Scratchy, we see our first advertisement for the Krusty 29th Anniversary Show Special. They're showing some clips, and this one is of Sideshow Mel when he's had just a little bit too much of the Wawa juice. And apparently this is actually a direct spoof of something that really did happen on The Tonight Show with Ed McMahon, where Ed McMahon may have had a few too many, and Johnny Carson just kept ribbing him by playing the clip and talking about how great of a comedian Ed McMahon is.
I'll tell you, you're a jerk.
What is clear is that everybody wants to go to that Krusty show. Homer and Bart are discussing what they do, and Homer even says he'd sell his firstborn son, to which Bart so takes offense to. Hey, you'll do what you're told, boy.
You'll do as you're told.
Meanwhile, Lisa is trying to get some advice from Marge. She's telling him about the Ralph situation, and she's asking what she can do to tell him nicely that she's not interested. Homer walks in for another beer about halfway through this conversation, and I love his line here. Ah, pity. What would my love life be without it? Marge is still trying to give some advice, and Homer is like, let me take over here, Marge. After all, I've heard them all. Let's just be friends. We should see other people. I don't speak English.
I get the idea.
I'm married to the sea. I don't want to kill you, but I will. And then Marge interrupts and takes back over and is just like, why don't you just tell him that you're not ready for this type of thing?
And then Homer has one of the best lines in the episode. He says, if that doesn't work, 6 simple words. I'm not gay, but I'll learn.
Fucking Homer.
He's not wrong.
Lisa decides to go with Marge's plan instead of her father's, so that's when we get that scene on the playground where Lisa is essentially telling him just what Marge says, that she likes him as a friend, but she's not really ready for anything emotionally more than that. Do you understand, Ralph?
Yes.
So she assumes that's handled, and she's happy to be done with that problem. But that's when we get the next scene, which is actually at the Wiggum home. And this is actually a pretty big reveal. This is the first time that it is officially announced that Ralph is Chief Wiggum's child. No, I mean, when his last name was revealed as Wiggum a few episodes back, or it was even last season possibly, I think everybody was, pretty aware of it, and they look similar enough, but this was actually the first time that the show acknowledged that they were father and son.
actually had a scene with them together, really.
A fucking great scene, and a very similar scene to the one we got with Marge and Lisa. But this time, Ralph is asking his father for essentially the opposite advice. He asks, how can you get a girl to like you? And this is a brilliant moment with Chief Wiggum where he says, son, liking a girl or cracking a nut both take the same thing, persistence. The great part, though, is while he's giving this speech, he's using the butt end of his gun, holding it by the handle, and cracking nuts with his fucking firearm.
Tough chestnuts there.
And when he actually struggles to get one to crack, he fucking unloads and shoots it open.
Hey, you're not going to keep a man from his love, right?
That'll be a lesson to you other nuts trying to give me a hard time.
What I like about this episode is I think this is the first full-length episode that establishes Ralph's character. We haven't really talked about that yet, and the episode's getting close to halfway over. Like, they've done glimpses of Ralph being the Ralph we all know and love, but this is the first full episode where they've set the parameters of that, which I find intriguing since it's the first episode, like you just mentioned, that actually establishes him as Wiggum's son as well. So it's like they just decided finally, like, we're getting this character down pat. These are his characteristics. Here we go.
The foundation has been laid, so it's building time.
Just like Ralph wants to do with Lisa.
There's another little last bit of this moment where Ralph is like, oh, so is persistence how you got Mom? And Chief Wiggum is like, well, son, never underestimate the power of a man in a uniform. And he kind of leans back and his gut busts out of his police shirt and starts resting on the table.
Yeah, you don't have to work that hard once you get him, right? I mean, once the girl agrees to marry you, then it's all uphill from there, right? Which is a metaphor and a funny contradiction.
Wow, that's some expert advice there. Should take that to heart. Back at the Simpsons home, we're getting another commercial for the 29th anniversary Krusty special, and this time it's Bart and Lisa watching as they're showing a clip of a time where they had a urine monkey expert, complete with a urine monkey sitting on Krusty's head.
Now, why do they call this the urine monkey? Ugh, just found out.
That's funny on so many levels. Bart and Lisa start talking about how badly they want to go to that event, but Lisa points out that their folks would have to be members of the Springfield Wealthy and Elite. And at that moment, Homer comes out brushing his teeth, which is good, to be fair. But then he pulls the toothbrush out of his mouth and is like, can you believe Flanders threw away this perfectly good toothbrush?
Oh.
Awful. And then we see Ralph has actually shown up at the Simpsons' door. Lisa peeks out the window and sprints away saying, make something up. So Homer says she's on the can, go away.
She's in the can, go away.
Yes, sir, I'd do anything for Lisa.
Anything you say.
So Homer takes absolute advantage of Ralph. He's up on the fucking roof, re-shingling it with tar. And I love he calls down to Homer, Mr. Simpson? The tar fumes are making me dizzy.
Yeah, they'll do that.
As he's sleeping in his hammock drinking a beer. It's fucking great. Perfect, Homer.
So maybe Ralph wasn't completely Ralph yet until this scene.
That's what it is. Oh, wow. So this character that you're so convinced that Lisa really had the hots for is actually in the middle of a very impressive audition in Mrs. Hoover's second grade class. He's trying out for the big role of George Washington, and after his performance, he must have been the last one to audition because Mrs. Hoover is ready to announce the cast, and Lisa will be playing the part of Martha Washington,
Woo-hoo!
Opposite of
Rex.
Ralph
What?
Wiggum.
Bullshit!
Somebody must have gotten to you.
But he's right. He's absolutely right.
She's like, no, I picked this solely based on performance. As she's flashing the window blinds and out in the parking lot, we see the cops and they're like, that's the signal, boys. Get the boot off her car.
And they all start laughing maniacally. Eddie and Lou.
Lisa's immediately worried because she thinks that Ralph might embarrass her on stage in front of everyone. And just then, a package arrives at the door, and of course, it's from Ralph.
Yeah, Lisa... it does. Oh, Ralph's package.
Lisa opens the package to find a Malibu Stacy convertible with a note in it saying, "Look in the tunk."
I think he means trunk.
And in the trunk, 2 tickets to the Krusty 29th anniversary show, which immediately upsets Bart. After all, he's 10 times the Krusty fan that Lisa is. He even has the Krusty home pregnancy test, which I love. There's a warning on the box that said it might cause birth defects.
May cause birth defects.
Lisa is truly conflicted because she doesn't think it's right to go if she's not interested in Ralph, after all. And Bart's like, "You're absolutely right, Lisa. You don't want to do that because that'd be dishonest. I tell you what, I'll go in your place and dress as you instead."
What if he wants to hold hands?
I'm prepared to make that sacrifice.
What if he wants a kiss?
I'm prepared to make that sacrifice.
What if...
You don't want to know how far I'll go.
Good old Bart, always dedicated to Krusty.
Then we see Homer in the hallway hanging yet another item that he found in the Flanders garbage, or possibly just in his home. That part's not really clear. It's actually his degree from the Oral Roberts University. Lisa comes up at that time and starts talking about, is it okay to take things from people you don't like? And Homer's like, "Of course, honey." Wait, you mean stealing, right?
And that's when Lisa asks, but what about her conscience telling her about it?
Don't let that pushy little weenie tell you what to do.
And that's why Homer never listens to his.
Well, and there's a great bit, too, where Homer's conscience actually appears, and it's actually like a droopy, like the old cartoon dog voice saying, "Oh, Homer, that's a terrible thing to say."
Shut up, you! Get back in there.
After getting her father's advice, Lisa decides it'll be okay to go to the show with Ralph, even though she really doesn't like him. They're on the way to the show. There's actually a really cool animation here where they're in the back of the squad car and Wiggum's driving, and you can see the reflection of like the road lines and signs in the windshield. It's just a real cool bit of animation right here. I really like it. And Lisa decides to ask, "Hey, Chief, how did you actually get these tickets? These are hard to come by." And he's like, "Oh, Krusty knows how to play ball." And we get an interesting little flashback here. Krusty's sitting in a porno theater where Wiggum comes in, sits in the row behind them, and is like, "Yep, nothing better than a good old-fashioned porno movie."
Well, to be fair, there is some merit to that statement.
Krusty's like, "Is this a bus, Chief?" And then Wiggum hesitates for a second, and he's like, yeah, that's exactly what it is." Probably my favorite line in the entire series is actually Lisa's next line, surprisingly enough. Lisa doesn't always have the funniest moments, but this one slays me. She just says from the back of the squad car, "That story is not appropriate for children."
Yeah.
And Chief Wiggum's like, "Really? My pants stayed on in that version." So it's finally at the Krusty's 29th anniversary show, and they've even got special guests Bill and Hillary Clinton in the audience tonight. He quips that, "I campaigned for the other guy, but I voted for you."
I got a tool shed around back of the White House. I'm usually there between 4 and 5.
Krusty's jokes are bombing, so he's like, screw it, let's just go to the clip. And we see a flash all the way back to 1963 with Robert Frost reading one of his poems on the Krusty Show.
And of course, it bores Krusty to death, so what does he do? He pulls the magical cord of comedy and dumps a whole bunch of snow on Robert Frost.
So what's great about that clip is the poem he's reading is stopping by woods on a snowy evening, and right after Krusty dumps the snowflakes on his head, he says the line, "We discussed this, and I said no." And the way he says it is actually in the same meter as the rest of the poem.
We discussed this, and I said no. Here comes all of my Robert Frost snow.
Exactly.
That's not the actual poem, by the way, people. If I had to make it clear.
What?
We discussed this, and I said no.
We also see a clip from 1973 where Krusty is like all hippied out and he's got like the psychedelic background going on, and he is just straight up jamming to break on through to the other side by the doors. He even says himself, "What was I on?" During this, Ralph offers some of his chocolate ice cream to Lisa, who declines, but Chief Wiggum is like, "Pass that on over, boy." And when Ralph does, he accidentally drops the scoop of chocolate ice cream right onto Lisa's fancy dress. And Wiggum's very upset, because after all, nothing gets chocolate out. See? And he points to his pants, who are all stained up with chocolate.
And is that when we have Krusty talking about his old sideshow buddy, Sideshow Raheem?
I'm supposed to bonk you on the head with this hammer.
I wouldn't.
Angry man. So, of course, now it's time for Krusty's favorite part of the show.
This might be my favorite moment and line in the Bart line that follows on the review recording. But I love, anytime Krusty does this line, I always love this line. It's it sums up Krusty so well when he's reading the cue cards and he says, "And now for my favorite part of the show." What's that say? Talk to the audience. Oh God, this is always death.
And meanwhile, Lisa's just sitting in the audience thinking to herself, please do not show me on TV with Ralph.
And anytime you have that thought in real life, it's not a jinx, it's just something that happens. You're always going to be the one picked.
And of course, Krusty walks right up to Ralph and asks, "Oh, is this your girlfriend?" To which Ralph replies, "Yes, I love Lisa, and I'm going to grow up and I'm going to marry her." To which Lisa replies,
"No! Now you listen to me. I don't like you. I never liked you, and the only reason I gave you that stupid Valentine is because nobody else would."
And this is where we flash to one of the more iconic moments from this episode. Probably the moment I remember the most, actually. A lot of it's because it's used in a lot of wrestling memes, to be honest, of various things that's happened over the years. But it shows back at the Simpsons home where Bart has this recorded on VHS and he's playing it over and over again in front of Lisa. And he's pointing out that if you pay attention closely, you can actually see the exact moment where his heart shatters.
Right there. And then freezes when he looks the most agonized.
And it's honestly, like, the animation is so well done here because you instantly just feel terrible for Ralph. How humiliating it must be for this to have happened to him on one of the most viewed... every single person at school is going to have watched the show. He just had one of the more horrible rejections that you could ever face all happen to him on national television. And once again, like I mentioned earlier, you also get a great transition shot here because you can also see just how affected Lisa is by this. Because after all, she really does like Ralph in the sense that she thinks he's a nice kid and doesn't want to hurt his feelings. But she also didn't want to be put on the spot where her pride was on the line. So she was put into a terrible spot where she ended up hurting a pretty nice guy, even if he's been coming on too strong.
This is a age-old adage of, don't ask the girl to marry you if there's a chance she's going to say no. Like, you don't go to the trouble to set all that up and do the proposal if you think if there's any doubt in your mind or you're going through something where you're not sure what the answer is. And this is a huge gamble by Ralph. But what I like about the scene is, you said it back in the Simpsons home, the transition from the audience into the living room where it's literally the exact same shot, but then it pans out and you realize you're watching a TV recording of it. I really like how they did that animation-wise. Where like you were live at the show and then it pans back through into the TV The Simpsons, so it all looks like it's one big deal.
It's a really, really good moment. I also really enjoy, there's clearly a commercial break here. This is the entrance into the third act, and it goes from Lisa being sad that she hurt Ralph to a reflection of Ralph in the pond where he just looks absolutely miserable. But it's a beautiful shot. The ducks actually in the pond kind of scatter his reflection, and it pans up to him sitting on the bench where he is in a just complete pity party where the ducks won't even be his friends right now, and that's all he's asking for.
Is that where we have his dad there too?
And I wanted to point out too, there's a major tone shift right here in this episode. It's actually something I really liked about this episode is up until this point, it had been a very funny episode with a lot of good jokes, a lot of very funny lines, and it had been relatively upbeat for the most part. And when it hits this third act, there is a very dramatic shift in the tone of the episode because it gets very, very sad, melancholy for at least a little while here. And as you pointed out, Chief Wiggum comes in to bring a little bit of levity to the moment because he's like, there's my boy. He's on top of the world. He's got the girl he wants in his arms, and the world is his oyster.
Ralph's like, no, Dad, she said she didn't like me.
Yeah, he actually said that she made a fool of him, and then Wiggum's like, oh, yeah, you know what? Now that I think about it, you're totally right. Well, they're going to have something coming when they see that I bring the full power of the police chief to him, and just then he realizes he can't find his badge, and the duck had taken it.
Hey, where's my badge?
I love when he's like squatted over trying to chase this duck down.
Yeah.
He's like, I need that. Come on. Forget it.
Poor Wiggum, foiled by a duck.
But he decides he's going to make things a little difficult on the Simpsons since they wronged his child. We see a scene where Chief Wiggum pulls over Homer, and Homer gets out of the car, which is funny to me because if you ever did that, you'd probably get shot in today's age where you burst out of the car like that.
But it is a town where they all know each other too.
True, it is a small town, and it's not 2017 either. Is the other part of it?
Didn't this little conversation kind of stir you up in a way about it being 2017?
It was very reminiscent of some major things that are going on in today's society. That it's once again the Simpsons being somewhat ahead of its time, and also just the way that things change, but they also stay the same in a lot of ways. And simply put, they have this conversation. Wiggum says he's pulling him over for a broken tail light, and when Homer asks where, he smashes one of them out with his nightstick. And Homer accepts this, but he lets him know, one of these days, these citizens are going to stand up against you crooked cops. And this puts Wiggum into a panic. He's like, oh no, they are?
Have they set a date?
Which totally, again, the corruption that exists in our society, it's an interesting little moment in this episode, and very reflective upon modern times.
Striking comments, young lad.
So the night of the President's Day play is finally upon us, and we see Principal Skinner and Willie are setting up the orange drink stand, and Skinner's saying that they really need to make their money back in orange drink, especially after the Fire Drill Follies fiasco. And Skinner's just has no idea what could have gone wrong, and I love Willie.
What did you think would happen when you started the night with a fire drill? They all left.
So you agree with my mother. It's all my fault.
See, Mar.
Better add some more water to the orange drink. Willie, I can't water it down anymore.
She's taking all she can.
Dude, honestly, Skinner and Willie have some of the absolute best two-man team moments on this show, and I realize how much that's saying, but I put them up there close to like a Smithers and Burns sometimes. They don't have as many moments, but some of their moments are the funniest damn thing in an episode.
Well, again, when you only have limited lines and limited things going on, you have to make it really stick, so.
Gotta make them land, exactly. The President's Day play opens up with a little song about our nation's mediocre presidents.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a wonderful evening of theater and picking up after yourselves. We are the mediocre presidents. They won't find our faces on dollars or cents. There's Taylor, there's Tyler, there's Fillmore, and there's Hayes. There's William Henry Harrison. I died in 30 days. We are adequate, forgettable, occasionally regrettable, caretaker presidents of the U.S.A. I peeked a little bit on A, but hey.
Backstage, we see Bart pulling a little prank. He put a nose and glasses on his butt and bent over and said, I am not a butt. I love Miss Hoover's line here. Bart, do you want to play John Wilkes Booth or do you want to run around like a maniac?
Act like a maniac. Beautifully poetic, Miss Hoover.
Ralph shows up to the building, and Lisa immediately tries to make amends. She apologizes, but Ralph says, I don't really want to talk to you. I'm here to play George Washington. But then he sits down in a wheelchair and gets a cigarette and a monocle, and he looks very much like FDR, and Lisa's like, Ralph?
Lisa's too distracting. I mean, can't blame the guy.
Before we get to Ralph and Lisa scene, though, we've got one between Milhouse and Bart. Milhouse is complaining that his beard is causing him a rash, but Miss Hoover's like, Milhouse, you've got one line and then you die. Get out there. Bart does possibly the greatest performance of John Wilkes Booth ever. He does it with a dash of Arnold Schwarzenegger as he imitates the Terminator and comes out saying, "Hasta la vista, AB."
And I love when he's tangling with Milhouse. Homer actually stands up and yells, "Come on, boy, finish him off!"
Bart isn't content to just assassinate Lincoln, though. He actually starts going after all the other presidents, and that's when Miss Hoover grabs him off the stage, and Bart is like, "Unhand me, you Yankee."
You know what I didn't pay attention to? I wish I didn't even think about this. I wonder if the other people he was shooting at were other presidents that were actually assassinated or attempted to be assassinated.
You know, I didn't write them down, and I didn't read anything about that, but that would be a pretty funny joke if they did it that way.
It would make sense, though, wouldn't it?
Well, it's time for the final performance of the evening between Lisa and Ralph as George Washington. And I love it. Actually starts on stage with Lisa in her chair and George Washington hunched over an actual fire that they built for this elementary school play. And he's actually holding the "I choose you Valentine" as if he's in heavy thought and really just thinking deeply about this piece of paper. He decides to drop it in the fire, and as it burns, it fires a passion inside of Ralph. And he gives possibly the best performance by any second grader in the history of all time as he nails the part of George Washington with a visible passion for the role.
Now, speaking as a former actor in middle school, high school, and a little bit in college, this is better than just the second grade. This is one of the best performances I've ever seen, like especially for Ralph. Rex Who is what I'm saying right now. # Rex Who.
I love that Rex has been dropped to the role of the guy who tries to bring him some broth in the tub and is sent away.
He, starts to threaten to cane him.
And perhaps the biggest sign of how touching Ralph's performance is the response we get from groundskeeper Willie.
"I didn't cry when my own father was hung for stealing a pig, but I'll cry now."
And he starts weeping into Principal Skinner's shoulder. The show ends with a big bang. They actually have a very expensive-looking puppet version of Mount Rushmore come to the stage with an American flag draping from it, and Principal Skinner's voice comes through the talking president's head as he wishes everyone a good night and also to make sure you pick up some orange drink on your way home.
The most overused budget for a school play I've ever seen. He just wants to talk as Teddy Roosevelt or whoever's on the Mount Rushmore. I don't remember anymore.
Well, like I said, Ralph did such a killer job that he's actually outside signing autographs for every girl in the school, it seems. They all want to get a piece of Ralph. Lisa is sitting off to the side on the swing set, and when Ralph sees her, he actually calls out to her and runs over. And Lisa's glad he did. They both sit and swing together for a moment, and Lisa starts to talk to him, and she actually has something for him. It's another Valentine's Day card, or I guess in this case, a President's Day card. This one says, "Let's be friends." And of course,
there's a picture of a bee on it.
And this isn't lost on Ralph, who Lisa was quite confident would enjoy that little bit.
Yeah, immediately after he gets over her and burns the symbol of his love, she gives him a new fucking symbol, just like a woman. She's got to keep him straggling along, just like Milhouse, just in case.
Well, honestly, that's not what I got. I just think this is a really sweet ending. I love all of it. They start swinging together as friends, and Chief Wiggum's actually in the parking lot looking on. And as you mentioned, they do a great little callback or wraparound at the start of the episode because Wiggum turns off the police scanner to the KBBL station where the DJs from the beginning of the show are wishing us a happy President's Day, and they're going to play a little tune to celebrate, and they put on Monster Mash.
The perfect President's Day song.
Not again. But it's truly a beautiful episode. Very funny, very sweet. It hits on all of the Simpsons cylinders. Was there anything else that you or that book of yours wanted to say about I Love Lisa?
We nailed everything that's in my book for this week. I was kind of shocked at how little information it had outside of the normal quotations and whatnot. But just me on a personal one, this is one of those episodes that has always had a lot of iconic moments, I think, in my mind. But I just never realized how fast the jokes come for the first 2/3.
Dude, it's like hitting you left and right with funny moments.
Yeah, it's so fast in this one. And then, again, when it hits that point where like it wants to get away from that, it does kind of like a reverse Shakespeare, where like Shakespeare's all drama and then has a little bit of comedy to break it up. They do the reverse of that, where there's all comedy, and then they hit you really hard with the drama at the end to tie it all back together. And I really enjoyed that, actually. Like, this is one of the episodes that I've always enjoyed, but I think actually notating it and watching it again, I enjoyed a little bit more this time, which, you know, I rarely say that about these things.
Sure. I mentioned it earlier. This episode was one I remember very fondly as a child, but as I remember it, it's really the funny moments that are stuck in my mind as my memory, because it's been at least a decade since I've seen this episode, and a lot of these moments still hold up and are just as funny as I remember them. But where this episode really shines is the heart of this episode connects so much more as an adult. It hits on more levels, and again, I think just with a more mature sense of empathy for other people's perspectives, this is a great episode. And I expected, when I was looking on the list, I expected this one to be a contender in my top 5. I'm not going to be shocked if this one is going to be contending on that top side of that list when we get to the end of all 23 of these or 22 of these this season.
I'm gonna have to go back and rewatch the whole damn season at this point.
Dude, this is gonna be the most challenging and most competitive top 5 list easily for me. I don't think there's any doubt in that. And you know how hard it's been on me in the past. This one's already stacking up to. I've got like 5 number 1 contenders.
My thing is, I can always, as we're doing the seasons, by the time we get to the last episode, I already know it's so easy for me to figure it out. But this one's gonna be a little bit different. But, you know, that's the fun of it. If it was the same every season, it would be boring.
Absolutely. And it gives us a reason to come back each week. So that will do it for I Love Lisa. Rich, what do you want to plug this week?
Well, first off, if you guys haven't, because we probably haven't mentioned it yet, we did a guest host spot on our friend Toby's podcast, Secret Transmission. That's at Secret Transpod on Twitter. We did an episode for him where Miles and I hosted it as ourselves, talking about local ghost stories. So make sure you go check that episode out. It just recently was uploaded to his page.
We were way out of our comfort zone on that one, but it was a lot of fun. That was a cool opportunity, and thanks again to everyone at the Secret Transmission podcast for giving us the opportunity to take over your show while you're taking a week off.
And definitely listen to them other weeks as well, because it is a very fun and interesting podcast. As for myself, you guys know the drill. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm at theWiz_kid23. Also, while you're on Twitter, go ahead and give our show a follow as well. That's at Best Darn Diddly. That's DIDDLY.
I am at MrMostDaysOff. That's Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. It works pretty much everywhere. Also, for you wrestling fans, make sure you go and check out Voices of Wrestling, where Chris Novembrino and I host Lucha of the Hidden Temple, a weekly Lucha Underground podcast. If you want to keep up with the Best Darn Diddly review show, you can find everything at bestdarndiddly.com. We, of course, are also on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and all of those places as well. As always, we appreciate you tuning in to the Best Darn Diddly review show. Thank you so much for listening. Richie and I look forward to being back with you next week for our review of Duffless.
And now for my favorite part of the week. What's that say? Talk to the listeners on Twitter. Oh God, this is always death.
Until next time, be cromulent to each other.
What up, everybody? This your boy B-Rob, the host of the Random Ramblers with Rob podcast, to where we have random guests and we have random conversation. I don't know why we're saying we, because it's just me, but I guess it's we in the sense that I have a guest weekly, airs every Sunday and everything. So I guess it's we like that. We French. So check it out. Go to randomrobcast.com or check me out on Instagram at Random Ramblers with Rob, or Twitter at It's B-Rob, ITSBROB. Whoa.